listening to the Ringside Renaissance Wrestling Podcast.
Welcome to the first ever inaugural episode of Ringside Renaissance Wrestling Podcast. I'm Kev.
I'm Andy.
I'm Jesse.
And we're about to get into it.
How you guys doing today?
Oh, just another beautiful day in paradise. How about you guys?
Oh, good. It's snowing outside. Ready to start this Ringside Renaissance of wrestling.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So first off, we're going to talk about what got us all into wrestling and the love for it and the history all behind it and how we grew up on it and what initially got us into it, what we love about it, what we love about it now, so we can start this renaissance of wrestling and bring all the fans back together.
Past, present, and future.
Yes, in this golden era we got now.
I'm going to let the two old timers start off because you guys have deeper history. My history only goes back to about 2001, so.
Okay, fair enough. Jesse, you want to go first or you want me to go?
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, well, my earliest memory of pro wrestling goes back to WrestleMania 8. That's the first conscious memory I have, and I was at my aunt's house for WrestleMania 8, and I remember it was Hulk Hogan versus Sid Justice in the main event, and for whatever reason, it stuck in my head, man. The referee got knocked out. Sid Justice started beating up on Hogan. Papa Shango came out. And then it was like a lightning bolt when I heard it. You know, you hear the da 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 da, and here comes Ultimate Warrior. And I just saw like he was larger than life.
All juiced up.
All juiced up, jacked, bro. And I didn't know at the time. All I knew was whatever this was, this character, this human being was larger than life, and it was like I was just drawn to the energy. I was drawn to the excitement of the crowd, the pop, as they say, as we say in wrestling lingo, and I just was drawn. And I was fortunate enough to be old enough. Thanks, Kev, for
You're welcome.
to watch the actual first episode of Monday Night Raw live, and not live in person, but on TV. And from there, it just grew. Like I'm gonna keep this short and sweet, but like. As Andrew and I grew up, we always had we grew up as friends. We both had a love for pro wrestling. That grew to me more liking the history of pro wrestling, studying territories, studying the roots of wrestling, and to where it progressed to where it was today. It's a beautiful thing. Like was said in the intro, like wrestling brings people together, you know, as much as there's tribalism, and you'll hear it on this podcast, man. Like I have a lot of criticisms towards pretty much any company, you know.
Right,
I want it to be better. I want wrestling to be better, you know. And I think that there's no growth in the comfort zone, and criticism needs to exist for wrestling in general to survive.
100%.
Absolutely.
So that's my earliest memories. That's what made me fall in love. As we go on with the episodes of this podcast, I'll dive in more with that. But that's just the short and sweet of it. I love pro wrestling. It gives us something to talk about, and at the end of the day, wrestling gives people something to talk about.
Whether it's good or bad.
Yeah,
right.
and when like something happens on a show and your phone starts blowing up, or hey, you need to watch this, you need to watch that clip, or whatever, when it attracts people and it brings people together. So I enjoy that aspect of it, and I'm glad that I'm getting back into it because I fell out of wrestling for a few years. It just became stale and repetitive for me. And I'm glad that there's a kind of a new wave, if you will, of wrestling, good, bad, or indifferent, because it brings interest back to the profession.
Right.
And not to quote The Rock, but like wrestling is cool again. It is. Like I haven't been this excited to watch wrestling in probably a long time. We're not going to talk about the previous man in charge, but the current man in charge has completely changed the game. Well, I think
to talk about now, we do have to talk about the past somewhat, and we'll cover stuff somewhat. And as Jesse said, and you also said, Kevin, we are in a resurgence of like this wrestling where it's coming back and becoming more popular and even greater. And that's also why the listeners, why we chose to call this podcast, the Ringside Renaissance, because we are in another Renaissance era of wrestling where it's coming back and becoming even greater and better. And well, Jesse, you mentioned that moment with the Ultimate Warrior coming in and stuff, and I do remember a lot of that, and a lot of our history with the love of wrestling and watching wrestling also goes back together, watching it and those moments and stuff like that, and pay-per-views. Saw wrestling, but I definitely remember one of the first moments that I, remember going back, and I can't remember what age it was. I'm sure it was probably like 4 or 5. And it had to be Hulk Hogan slamming Andre the Giant.
Iconic moment.
Iconic, and everybody knows that moment. That's probably the most watched moment, I think, of WrestleManias or something.
Of any time.
Of anything.
Just a man of Hulk's size. Granted, Hulk was big, but
right.
Picking up a man the size of Andre the Giant, even to this day, you don't see that often.
Right, for pro wrestling on television or TV in general. It's just widely known across the world, and that's one of the first thing I remember. And growing up in sort of a rural area, we didn't have cable TV.
Right.
So to be able to get a pay-per-view was pretty unheard of. You would have to get it. You would have to watch it back afterwards. And what we had was, before Monday Night Raw and SmackDown and all that started, we had like Saturday morning wrestling or Saturday night wrestling.
Yep.
Or stuff in the afternoon that would get played back, and it would kind of be like the squash matches and little stuff. But you would see like those top superstars of that day, which was fucking awesome.
Right.
So one of the best moments when I was growing up, I had to been 5, 6, 7 years old, something like that. And my mother actually had a friend, and he somehow lived not too far from us, but he would get all the pay-per-views. He had cable somehow.
There's always that one person.
Yeah, and he would give me a VHS tape of the pay-per-view wrote down.
Oh, that's cool.
And it would be the Royal Rumble, one of the early ones from the 90s or whatever, and played back. And I'd be like, oh, that's so awesome. I remember telling him that's so awesome. I was just like in awe of the moment of being able to watch that and see the whole thing and like see all these guys and the full matches. And then one night I was sitting at home on the weekend, and the phone rang, and it was this man on the phone, and he called and he said, well, I'll be there in about 15 minutes. Watch for me. Just here he goes. He shows up, and he shows up with this giant shoe box, or boot box rather. And inside this giant box must have been like 30 or 40 VHS tapes, all packed in. And they were all labeled, and they were all going back to the late 80s and up to that present time, which must have been about 95, something like that. And there were every pay-per-view, WCW, WWF, WWE, and it just had everything, the Survivor Series, the WrestleMania. So I would watch them back and forth. And growing up earlier, that's when I met Jesse. We were somewhat neighbors to our family, and we would talk about wrestling, and we'd always be messing around like kids do, doing the moves on each other and all that.
Yep.
And growing up, moving on to that, moving to a different place, we then now had cable. We then now had Monday Night Raw that started coming on. We had this guy coming up called Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
And leading into that, we remember like Hulk Hogan and all that, the Ultimate Warrior, Randy Savage and all that, and that era of wrestling. And leading into that new era, the Attitude Era, was Stone Cold and what Shawn Michaels had become at that point, and Triple H and D-Generation X and all that stuff. And so then it was my time to be able to get pay-per-views. And pay-per-view we got, which was the first one, which I believe was Royal Rumble. And Jesse came over and we watched the Royal Rumble. And I believe Stone Cold won that Royal Rumble. I think there might have actually been a pay-per-view before that you came over and we watched, and it was Bret Hart versus Stone Cold.
Oh, that was but I think that was I believe that was the Survivor Series, Bret Hart versus Stone Cold.
Okay, yeah, that's what it was.
I don't believe it was WrestleMania yet. It was when Bret Hart came back and challenged Stone Cold.
Yeah, that's what I think. We watched that one together. I believe so. Yeah.
Yep.
And so then moving on to the Royal Rumble one that I mentioned, where Stone Cold did win the Royal Rumble, we watched that, and I just remember being so freaking stressed leading up to it. Like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do if Stone Cold loses. Like, I like, this is my favorite wrestler now. Like, he's fucking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And of course he won, and the rest was history. While we were watching that, we were also down in the basement, in the dungeon, doing all these wrestling moves and stuff, you know, wanting to do all this stuff we saw on TV. But long story short, you know, the rest was history. And going on to that, you know, we were great friends, and we had a great bond over wrestling and everything else. And it would be such a big deal back then when you didn't have the internet to be able to go to the store or the mall and buy a VHS tape of any of these wrestling events, because we couldn't afford every pay-per-view back then. So it was different.
No, it was like, what, $60?
Yeah. And so we would watch every Raw or SmackDown, and we would try to watch all of them. If not, we would re-record them. And if you couldn't watch the pay-per-view, you would have to find out what happened the next Monday night, and you would only get a little glimpse of it. So
not even a video clip. It was just like stills and pictures of the matches. They would never show clips from it.
Right. So we'd be at the mercy of our parents pretty much to be able to get money from them to go buy these videotapes or these pay-per-views, or we'd have to save the money up, and we'd have to go back years sometimes and watch these ones again. And there was so many that so much time we spent getting these and watching them over, and so many of them I remember. The love of that. It's freaking awesome.
And that's the beauty of like today's day and age, because you could go on Peacock and watch any wrestling event in history. You could go back and watch the first WrestleMania right now.
Right. Absolutely.
None of us had that capability of doing it when we were growing up.
And it's funny too, like you hear, like when you watch documentaries and shows, they talk about like tape trading. And they're like, oh, we're tape trading and stuff like that. And that was like legitimate. Like it was legitimate. Like I remember when that sparked a memory when you were talking about the tapes with the labels on the side. And I was talking about, I think it was Halloween Havoc 92.
Oh my God.
And they had the Chamber of Horrors match. And like when I saw that, I was
tiered.
No, it was the one that had a electric chair came down in the middle of the ring, like halfway through the match. And like I just remembered watching that, and I'm like, what is this?
What am I thinking of?
That was the Tower of Terror.
Yeah.
But like seeing those and like hey, can I borrow this tape? Hey, can I borrow this tape? And it was just a cool event. And it wasn't just like us. You know what I mean? Like when we were able to order those pay-per-views, it was a whole event. Like our parents were there, like my brothers were, you know what I mean? Like the whole it was like a whole like commute, like, you know what I mean? We'd all like huddle around the TV, right?
And he spoke on Halloween Havoc and getting those tapes. Halloween Havoc was one of them, and I had never heard of Halloween Havoc.
Right.
At that point, I only knew WWF. What is WWE at this point? And so to get the WCW tapes and be able to get that history of it was awesome, because I'd never really heard of that much. And going on to the Monday Night Wars, and then that's when WCW became more apparent to me, and we would watch it back and forth. At that time, I was more WWF. And I was rooting for D-Generation X to get to their step. They were in the Humvee or whatever.
Night Invasion.
Yeah, and that's what made me love wrestling. Austin and then The Rock at that point, and the Undertaker and D-Generation X. And
you just hit my note.
We had these T-shirts. We had the Austin 3 Suck It. We had the Suck It T-shirt. We all got in trouble at school for saying, I got two words for you. Suck it.
Everybody used that as a diss, and then next thing you got detention because you told your teacher to suck it.
One of the best things ever was going into middle school, right? And like the hype of wrestling, like as far as its popularity, died down a little bit. When the Monday Night War ended, it died down a little bit. And here comes Andrew walking through the hallways with a hurricane shirt on. Stay in the back. There's a hurricane coming through, right? And only him and I, like for the most part, knew but it was like he wore that shit, and I was like, oh, that's so fucking cool. And everyone else is like, what the fuck's the hurricane? But like we knew, you know what I mean? And, like when you had that little bit of like camaraderie, you know what I mean? Like people that knew, you know,
right.
And people that didn't know didn't have to know. But what you're talking about with like that boom, you're right, with like Austin, Rock, D-Generation X. There are people that weren't watching wrestling that were doing the suck it just because it was the thing to do. And like even if you weren't a pro wrestling fan, Like people knew Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Even wrestling fans pick up on like little things that wrestlers do, and us wrestling fans take from it. Like, how many people do you hear say "what"?
Right.
What? Yep.
Like, I could be talking to someone who's never watched wrestling, and if I pause in the conversation, they say "what," and it's just like, ah.
Yeah.
But Andy, you hit a note earlier. You mentioned one guy, and he's the guy that got me into wrestling,
Right.
The Undertaker.
Yeah, absolutely.
My earliest memory is the Ministry of Darkness in 1999.
Okay.
Feuding with the Brood, and at the end, the Brood joined the Ministry. That was the first time any of us really got to look at Edge and Christian. Gangrel still looks creepy to this day.
Right. And
he makes other videotapes now, but you know.
I used to think the fangs were real, man, because every interview he ever did, he had the fangs in.
Yeah.
Back in the days where kayfabe held.
Right. And I have a love for vampires and, and all
anything. That's what really drew me into wrestling. Was the dark and creepy side of all of it.
Right.
Papa Shango.
Yeah. Definitely. And our love of it grew even after that point, after the Attitude Era, when we started getting a little older, and we would all have the soundtracks.
Oh,
and that's what made us love it too. I remember getting the first one. I think I have it in the back here, right up there. It's still a cassette tape. That's volume 2 right there.
Oh my
and
God.
I just remember playing it over and over. And then even the other ones are on the game. Me and Jesse would set up boxes. We would have fake chairs. We would have the belts. We would set up all these mattresses, and we would do all the moves, and we would do all the entrances.
We would play all the ladder match on a trampoline.
Right, exactly. So
we did it, yeah.
And
is that cassette? Is that the one that's got the Jeff Jarrett song on it?
I believe so. I have to check the back.
We played that down in the dungeon, like we're going back now, right? When we watched Royal Rumble 97, we used that same cassette tape that he's got up there to like do our entrances down into the dungeon and like wrestle. He had like one of those like the little 1.5 like gym mats.
Wrestling mats. Yeah,
like
wrestling mats.
On the floor of this cement basement, and we would go wrestle
that really don't have any give in them.
No, yeah. And then like the support beams in the basement, like those were our turnbuckles, and we wrestle, dude, for hours. Like, oh, I'm Owen Hart this time. Oh no, I'm Bret this time. Oh, I'm Stone Cold. Like, it was just that's what we did.
One of my favorite things me and my buddies used to do, because my buddy is the one who really got me into wrestling at the age of 4 or 5.
Right.
He was my next door neighbor. We would hang out. He had a trampoline. But by the time we got to like the age of 10, now his dad didn't really pay attention to what the hell we were doing. My mom was never home when I was over there. So we would have ladders set up next to the trampoline. I'm hitting him with swanton bombs onto the trampoline. Just crazy shit. You know how many times I took a power bomb on that thing?
Yeah, that's all we did.
8 times.
Yep. That sounds about accurate.
I could probably text him right now, like, yo, how many times did you hit me with that? F5.
Yeah, and I'm willing to guess based on how you are now that all those times you probably landed on your head.
100%. How many times I fell off the trampoline and landed on my head? A lot.
We all did. We all took a few chair shots to the head back then, as it was normal.
We didn't know how to not put pressure on chokehold, so we were all passing out all the time.
And when talking about like the history with like the VHS tapes, I remember vividly going to the store and getting WrestleMania 17.
Yep. X7,
Yep. X7 and watching that with Jesse for the first time, like the TLC match, like Stone Cold versus The Rock, on Stone Cold turning with the chair on The Rock at the end with Vince and all that craziness. Like,
you
it
guys
was fucking awesome. And that cemented the fucking love right there. Like, that one right there was just amazing. WrestleMania, we're on WrestleMania season right now, so that's why I bring that up. Going on after that, I just didn't watch it much because we always have other stuff going on in life. Sometimes we come back to things and we fall away from them, and the Brock Lesnar era kind of started. And there was this guy then called CM Punk, and I remember him just coming up, and I was like, I don't know about that much. I didn't watch for a while, and then, leading into probably like 2014, 2015, I happened to be around one of my other good friends, Dante, when I had, moved to another place, and he got me back into it, and he was watching it. And then I'm like starting to go back and watch what I missed. And I started learning more about the CM Punk guy. and all these other people that came up in between that time, the Shield, and how they got their start and stuff like that. And that led to me loving it again, and I haven't stopped watching since.
I think
And
what brought me back was, truthfully, I stopped watching about the same time when Punk first started coming up.
right.
And believe it or not, what got me back into it full time was, God rest his soul, the Wyatt family.
Awesome. Yeah.
I don't
definitely.
know what it was. Maybe once again, going back to the whole creepy aspect, once Undertaker started showing up less and less because he's getting older.
Right.
And they put that new face of fear on this character named Bray Wyatt.
Right.
And I was starstruck. I'm like, that first appearance on Monday Night Raw, where they show up on the Titantron, he says, "We're here," and he blows out the lantern, and then they come out and he just sits in the chair.
That's awesome. Yep.
Oh my God. Like, not even just me, the fans around the world, from that moment on, those phones were out with the flashlights lit every time that man showed up.
And that's iconic, and that's a cool scene to, remember and be able to hear about that, and, how the documentary came out and see that, because I didn't get to, live that live and watch that live every weekend. So
Right.
it was cool to be able to see that. And then, you talking about now about Bray Wyatt and the whole darkness, with the, dark characters and stuff like that. And you mentioned that the first thing you remember is, the
Ministry.
Undertaker and Ministry of Darkness. Now, Now, is that the first thing you literally remember with wrestling, or
Pretty
you have
much.
other memories?
And then Hogan versus Rock at WrestleMania.
Okay, so going back to that and picking up on that with you, what do you remember after that, and what else got you into it?
Kane burying the Undertaker alive.
Yep, great
And
moment.
the
That was awesome.
return at WrestleMania 20 of the Phenom. The Dead Man, when he brought back the dead gimmick instead of, I love the American Badass. The American Badass is my favorite version of the Undertaker. I loved it. It's just,
Yeah.
I grew up around motorcycles, so
Right,
seeing this dude just like all American out, riding that bike, and just kind of letting you in behind the curtain as far as who Mark Calloway was. Because that was, let's be honest, the American Badass was more Mark Calloway than it was Undertaker.
And that was a big change when that happened, leading
Huge
from the other
change.
Undertaker to the one when he did the American Badass. And I do remember that. And let's face it, whether we want to admit it or not, we were all fans of Limp Bizkit at that time, for sure.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about that was, like, Undertaker was the Undertaker, right? But he needed something. He needed like a revamp. You know what I mean? So like a lot of fans didn't accept it at the time, but I can appreciate it now, like what he was trying to do.
Like when he brought it back,
They were trying
a few years ago.
Right. And they were trying to steer away from more gimmicky and be more real life on screen personas. So like to get rid of the whole dead man, whatever, like it was needed at the time, and I can respect it now, but like at the time I just rejected it. I was like, no, dude, that's the Undertaker. He lives in a graveyard. He doesn't ride a motorcycle. And it was just my ignorance to it at the time, and I was still young. But when you were bringing up the CM Punk era and the Shield and the Wyatt family and stuff like that, brought up a memory in myself, because like I was at like a dark point in my life at that point. I was really in a bad spot in my life. And my brother would always call me and ask me to come over and watch Monday Night Raw with him.
Okay.
And that was like only one part of like normalcy in my life. I was doing all this crazy stuff in my life, but like Monday nights were like, or like the next day, Tuesday, we would watch like the replay of it if I couldn't go over Monday night. And that was like a set of normalcy. Like my brother and I would sit down and we would watch Monday Night Raw, and I watched the Shield come up, and like the Wyatt family come in, and CM Punk's whole straight edge society and stuff, and all that stuff was
perfect.
And that was like I would go and sit with my brother, and like for those few hours, like I would just feel like normal again, because I was in a bad spot,
Right.
And to see these wrestlers, because I used to go watch Ring of Honor in Montreal and all this different stuff, and I would see Tyler Black, who became Seth Rollins. I saw Bryan Danielson, who became Daniel Bryan. I saw Roderick Strong.
No way, he did?
Yeah. Surprise. El Generico. El Generico, who became Sami Zayn, Kevin Steen became Kevin Owens, like, you know,
Right.
all these people, like, and I saw them like in the Kenny Omega, I saw him in like his second year wrestling. Like I saw him in a match in Ring of Honor. Oh yeah, live. He did a moonsault. It was a fatal 4-way. He did a moonsault from the top rope to the outside and overshot it and went over the guardrail and landed on a couple fans like in Montreal. Like they had to stop the match like to make sure these fans were okay and stuff. Like I was there. Like I was like right there. You know what I mean? Like to see like these guys like in preliminary organizations, then see them rise up, and like now you see like Seth Rollins
For how much longer?
Stay tuned for episode 2. Tune into episode 2. I think at the end of the day, to wrap it up in a bow here, pro wrestling has been a part of our lives like without our permission.
Right.
I tried to get over it. I tried to be like, oh, I'm too old for this shit. That shit's phony. That shit's whatever. But like I tell people all the time when they're like, "You watch wrestling? You know that stuff's fake." And first of all, it's not fake. But so all you do is watch documentaries and read biographies. You know what I mean? Like movies are fake, TV shows are fake. All of this entertainment is fake. It's just a form of entertainment that speaks to us for whatever reason.
I just had that argument with a guy I work with currently.
Yeah,
he overheard me and someone talk about wrestling. Goes, "Oh, you watch that? It's fake." I turned around. And I shook my head. I'm like, "Do you like movies? Do you like the Avengers?" He goes, "Yeah, why?" I'm like, "You really think they saved New York City? Like, come on, that's fake."
I don't think anything can save New York City at this point.
Nothing.
Yeah.
New York City is so beyond screwed. But
I love New York City. I love New York City.
Ghostbusters.
Just anybody saying wrestling's fake, I look at them like, I'd love to see you go out there and put on a 30-minute match and come back without a scratch.
Right. So, you know, we would just want to send out a giant fuck you to everybody.
To all the haters.
The haters all along.
If you hate us because we love wrestling, eat a giant you-know-what.
Yeah, and from all the fans.
Immerse yourself. Like, this is the thing. You have to buy in. Like, you have to go into watching it, realizing that it's an art form, realizing that it's a show.
It's called sports entertainment for a reason.
If you go into it being like, oh, all this shit's phony, then you're just going to buy into it being phony. But if you just buy into the characters and the progression of the characters and the long-term storytelling and like things like that, then if you just immerse yourself in that, like it becomes like a, you know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, looking back on it, the Attitude Era, obviously Stone Cold Steve Austin wasn't beating up his boss all the time, and all this different stuff. He who will not be named, beating him up and stuff. But
let's just call him Voldemort.
Because at the end of the day, the boss would just fire him. Obviously, it's storyline and it's gimmick and it's character, but like it just added to the realism because like nowadays, like it's like people want to beat up their boss. People want to tell off their boss. People want to flip off their boss and tell them, you can't tell me what to do, but they can't. So they live through these characters.
That was the beauty of watching those moments, like Stone Cold showing up in the hospital, smacking him over the head with the bedpan.
Right.
Like, workers at that time are watching that like, oh God, I wish I could do that.
And we will always remember those moments that brought us into it. As you were speaking, like you went through tough times and stuff, and like we've all had, I'm sure times like that too that we drifted away or came back to it. And wrestling is an escape from reality, for something we get to watch on TV, and that's the great thing about it. It's always been there. It's every Monday or every week, even during the shutdowns and all that. It's always been there. And speaking on like the criticism of wrestling, we're going to try to remain unbiased somewhat, but we also are going to criticize it and we're going to give it props when it's needed. And same with the past and all that with the wrestling. We're going to break all that down too and try to bring it to light now and also with current times. And speaking on the people that have always criticized wrestling, we spoke about the band Kiss. And let's face it, pro wrestling is kind of like Kiss. You either love it or you fucking hate it.
Hate it, yep.
Not to quote,
we fucking love it.
And not to quote
them.
If you guys both seen the Bray Wyatt documentary?
I just finished it last night. Yeah.
Yes.
He has a quote in there. Wrestling is not a love story. It's so much more.
Right.
It's a chance to become immersed in a different world, a spectacle unlike any other.
Absolutely.
And that's just what it is.
He couldn't have said it any better.
That's the way I've ever heard wrestling summarized as is it's so much more than a love story.
And we'll break it down more in the future with bringing these other real life aspects into it, nationalism and all this other stuff. And Jesse, you can break it down the best with the wrestling psychology, with things like that. And you also spoke on going to live events or pay-per-views or Monday night. Going to those shows gives you more appreciation for it. And speaking for me, made me love it even more.
Yeah.
You know, I went to one when I was 10 years old, you know, a house show. And I saw fucking The Undertaker, Owen Hart, Bret Hart, Yokozuna, like all the great ones, you know, at a house show, putting it on like it was a pay-per-view. And that meant everything to me, to be able to buy those Bret Hart glasses and take those home and be able to wear them on the school bus and go to school the next day with them. That meant everything and cemented, you know, the love for it too there. Like, I don't know if you guys want to speak on more about like events and stuff that got you into it, if you went to them.
My first event was 2005, the Great American Bash, HSBC Arena, Buffalo, New York. I got to see The Undertaker versus Muhammad Hassan. And he gave him the last ride off the stage. Like, he removed one of the metal grates from the stage, and he just gave him the last ride through the stage. And I'm pretty sure you never saw Muhammad Hassan after that. But it was also...
there was other reasons for that, too.
Yeah, they had for one, it was just post 9/11.
Yeah, I was going to say, what year was that? Yeah.
And not even just that, they had an Italian man playing the character of Muhammad Hassan, which back then you didn't realize until current time, when the curtains pulled back, if so to speak, if you will, on kayfabe.
Yeah, I didn't know till I was about 20 years old that Yokozuna wasn't Japanese; he was Samoan.
Same.
So I mean,
same.
It's like, what are we gonna do?
He's in the Samoan dynasty family.
Right.
You're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I remember, and this was when I was an adult. I went to an indie show, and it was to raise money for like a youth hockey team. And they said they were just trying to raise whatever money. So they were like, "Oh, if you pay $20, you can get in the ring and take a picture with the indie wrestlers and stuff. So like, take my money." You know what I mean?
Right.
I've always wanted to be in a ring.
Yes.
And I went in the ring, and the first thing I did was start hitting the ropes. And I was like, you know what I mean? And they were like, you know, for insurance reasons, you can't do this, right? And I didn't give a shit, dude. Throw me out of the event. I got up on the second rope, and I was, you know, and like, and it was just cool. It was like a surreal moment when I was surrounded by these wrestlers. There was a couple, like Spike Dudley was there.
The forgotten Dudley.
They said, I never forgot. And they said like the Repo Man was there. I don't think it was the original Repo Man. Someone repoed his character. But like, it was just like, I didn't know a lot of these indie wrestlers, but for that moment, like I was in the squared circle, you know, like where I saw all these amazing events happen. And like, it was really cool. And then I got to do it a couple years later. I went to a TNA event. The Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame used to be in Amsterdam, New York.
Okay,
and, so I used to go every year to the induction ceremony when they inducted wrestlers into not the WWE Hall of Fame, the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame.
That's awesome.
And I got to meet Bruno Sammartino.
Oh
I got to meet the Russian Bear, Ivan Koloff. I got drunk with Jimmy Superfly Snuka. You know, like, I got a Polaroid with me with Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Like, he kept stealing my brother's cigarettes. Like, it was it was just a funny thing. Like a Road Warrior Animal. You know, all this different stuff. Yeah.
So I bought Randy Orton a shot at a bar in Buffalo about 6 years ago.
Okay.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
They were here for a live event. My cousin used to own a nightclub downtown Buffalo. And I used to go there every so often. And I just remember sitting there and I'm looking over at the bar. I'm like, God, this guy looks familiar. And my cousin happened to be working. I'm like, yo, who is that? He goes, really? You love wrestling and you can't tell me who that is? And then it clicked.
Right.
I'm like,
you didn't recognize him.
Shit, that's the Legend Killer. So I just walked over to him like, hey, man, huge fan. Can I buy you a shot? He's like, sure. We just shot the shit for a good 40 minutes just about.
And I'm sure that you asked him to RKO you.
I did. I don't know how to pull off an RKO.
I went to a Raw in must have been the late 90s because Stone Cold had just kind of came out and become a thing. I think it was probably after that, you know, Royal Rumble we had watched together, but, you know, my mother and my sister, you know, had paid for us to go. We went to Albany, New York, which wasn't too far from Plattsburgh, you know, where I am now. went to Monday Night Raw there, and Austin came out, and I just remember having a sign, and my mom let me make it. She was cool as hell, and
I
it
forgot
said, and
about
it
making
said,
signs.
I remember hearing him say in a promo about opening a can of whoop ass. So I was like, I wanted to say open a can of whoop ass, and I put the sign up there, and the rest is history. But I don't want to say I'm taking credit for it, but it kind of became a huge phrase after that. So just saying.
I said it
Big
probably
royalty checks.
daily.
You're going to send
I might have
royalty
been the
checks.
first one with a big sign with it saying "Open a can of whoop ass," man. People were looking at it like, "Oh, that's a good idea."
Yeah. So Austin, if you're ever watching this, you need to come on here and thank
Yeah,
Andy for
Yeah.
for giving you the slogan. You
And-
wouldn't have been as big a superstar as you were if it wasn't for coming to the Pepsi Arena.
Yeah.
Stone
Albany,
Cold,
New
I'm
York.
also an
Yeah.
advocate for your beer, Broken Skull IPA. It's up
Drew
there.
wants his props. Yep.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Drew.
Yeah.
I remember
So-
making a sign though for when I went to the Great American Bash. I had the Undertaker, the T symbol with the X through it.
Yeah.
I had that on a sign, and I mixed that with his American Badass gimmick because it said "Dead Man Walking." And
Oh yeah.
that
Yep.
was I just the effort you would put into making your signs, hoping you would get seen on TV.
Right.
The
And
only
you would tell my mom, "Hey, make sure you're watching this to see if you see us."
The only time I ever made a sign for a wrestling event is that indie show that I went to, and Doink the Clown was there. And not the original, but like a Doink the Clown was there, and I
How
remember
many
like,
Doinks have there been?
I don't know, 4, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I remember being in my girlfriend at the time, she had like a hatchback, and we opened up, like, we got to the event like 3 hours before the show, and we opened the hatchback, and we're making signs like
Oh
That's
yeah.
great.
in like the back, right? And like I was like, what am I gonna do for Doink? Like, I mean, Doink the Clown,
Right.
So
Right.
so my brother and I came up with this sign that said, "I want to see Doink stink." And like we were like holding it up. Yeah, we were like holding it up. I was like, "I want to see Doink stink," like it was funny. And actually, Brutus the Barber Beefcake wrestled at that event.
Mhm.
And I actually got in the ring with Brutus the Barber Beefcake, now that I remember it. And I have some funny stories of Brutus Beefcake, man. But
That's awesome.
it was his wedding anniversary. So somebody had told us it was his wedding anniversary. So we made a sign that said "Happy Anniversary, Brutus." And we held it, and he came over and like acknowledged the sign. Like, you know what I mean? We were front row, and he came over and like gave us a thumbs up, and like
Nice.
it was pretty
That's
cool.
awesome.
See,
Yeah.
I can't even talk about the one and only wrestler I met because his name is no longer allowed to be mentioned.
No,
Randy
okay.
Orton?
What?
You
No,
met Randy Orton.
Well, okay.
I think his name is his first name is Chris, right?
Yes.
Okay.
His
fair
first
enough.
name is Chris.
Listen, that's a great segue.
I met him
Yeah.
2 months before that happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which is an awesome segue, because we're going to go into our, in the interest of time here, we're going to go into our top 5 right now.
Yeah.
And we're going to
do it.
start with our top 5, who we think are our favorite wrestlers, and then who we think is like a Mount Rushmore as far as trying to keep our personal feelings and opinions out of it. Who are
Right.
the top 5 greatest
And how many
wrestlers of all
faces
time?
are on Mount Rushmore? Just was it 4
There's
or 5?
4. There's
4?
4.
Yeah,
We're
we'll
gonna-
do 4. We can
we'll
do
do
4 or
4.
5. Yeah.
All right, we'll do
yeah.
4. Yeah. All right. All right. So who wants to start? First of all, with who your top 4
Are we going
Uh,
favorites? First?
favorites, and then greatest. Yep.
All right,
Yeah,
so
Kevin, you're
favorites?
youngest, so you're going first.
All right.
Yep.
I already mentioned him once, but Taker. Taker is my number 1 favorite wrestler.
Okay.
Just the mystique of the character. Even nowadays, seeing him watching the one Dead Man show,
hmm
I love him. He's still the Undertaker to me. But then I got Triple H, Rey Mysterio,
Okay.
Boy,
CM Punk.
Mm-hmm.
that's 4.
Yep. There you go. Can't argue with any of those. I mean, they're all
And
good choices.
They are. They're very good.
Yeah.
That's just those are the guys that kept me in the loop as far as loving wrestling. Like every time Rey Mysterio is returned, I bug out because I love it.
Right.
The fact that he's how old and he still moves like he's 20,
Mm-hmm.
I love it. And
Now that's-
Triple H
now-
and Punk, they're
Right.
best friends now.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, who knows?
They're
Yeah.
business associates.
They're on in a better
Hey, if
place now
you-
than they were.
If you get this point from Triple H in a picture, you've succeeded in life.
You're making them money. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
something right. Yeah. So you said those are your favorites. So Now, moving aside from that, trying to be unbiased, who do you think who's the Mount Rushmore of all
Mount
time?
Rushmore. I got 5 on here though.
Okay,
And
ramble them off. Let's hear them.
what goes into these, the factors I put in is just star power, overall just total in-ring presence, whether it's on the mic or just skills in the ring.
Okay.
I got Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold, Mick Foley, The Undertaker, and The Rock.
Okay.
Wow.
Can't argue with that.
No, can't at all. Mick Foley was a surprise, but it's very understandable.
Yeah.
Dude, Mick Foley, the only reason and the only reason he's ever going to be on my list is the Hell in a Cell with Undertaker.
Right.
To me, that's solidified, dude. This dude will give anything to the business.
Awesome.
Like, he almost died multiple times in that match.
It was a crazy match. And
At the time,
Yeah.
Wow.
If you see someone get thrown off a Hell in a Cell, like when Shane fought Taker at WrestleMania and he dove off the cell and missed the mark and just went through the table, all I kept thinking about was Mankind. And that just solidified my love for Mick Foley.
Awesome.
The street fight with Edge at WrestleMania.
Right.
It's
So
peak
good.
Mick Foley. But that's me.
Probably
What do you
peak
guys
Edge
got?
as well.
Oh, peak Edge for sure. Edge peaked with the whole rated R gimmick.
Those good selections. I guess I'll go. I'm second oldest or second youngest, I guess. So I'm gonna
Is
go
that?
with it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not 36 yet.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Thanks. Yeah.
2 weeks from today. So
Okay.
yeah. So top 4 of my favorite. This is going to be controversial here. So
No, I'm here for it. I couldn't wait to hear your list. I couldn't wait for it. Yeah.
So first, number 1, and I'm not going to put him in any specific order, but I'm going to put this one number 1 because he is my number 1, Rowdy Roddy Piper.
Okay.
Love Rowdy Roddy Piper. Loved everything he did. Blurring the lines of reality and gimmick is to the point where he even struggled with it late in his life. What was real and what was character,
Right.
And
He was like the perfect
he just-
smack talker.
so good. He was so good, and people don't know, like, he was like legitimately trained in like and things like that.
Right.
And I actually have a book written half by him and like half by his kids, because he was writing it and he died while writing it, and then his kids finished writing it.
Wow.
And it's really good.
I didn't know that.
It's very good read. Number 2, I'm gonna have to go Stone Cold Steve Austin. That was my time. That was my era.
Yep.
That was just, to me, that was just peak wrestling in my life, and it just that was when I grew up. Everybody, I wanted to open a can of whoop ass and
Right.
drink some Steve Weisers and
Question,
whatever.
how many times have you smashed 2 beers together?
Oh
and-
Jesus! To
We've
act
all
like
done
Stone
it.
Cold or just
Yeah.
to be a dick?
Yeah.
Either way.
I haven't done it in years, but it was. There
we
was
would
a few
smash
anything.
anything. We still smash
Anything.
water bottles, anything.
Yeah,
It
Right,
doesn't matter
just
what
to
it
get
is.
that-
Capri Suns,
Yeah.
So that was number 2.
Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid, yeah, drinking
Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid. Yeah. Number 3 for me, I had some back and forth. I mean, it's hard to narrow it down. It's really hard to narrow it down. I really liked. Oh my God, I just drew a blank. I'm sorry. As growing up, as far as like holding in ring work, I have 2. Okay, I'm gonna do 5. So number 3 for me is Owen Hart. I think if the tragedy hadn't happened to Owen Hart, he would have been a world champion. I think there would have been a lot more great memories for him as far as in ring. I think he was one of the best in ring workers. And then after that, okay, this is kind of a wild oddball, but for favorite wrestlers, as far as I go, Arne Anderson. I love Arne Anderson. I love Arne Anderson. If you don't,
Horseman, right?
if you haven't watched any like 80s, early 90s Arne Anderson, him as with the Brain Busters with, geez, why do I keep drawing blanks? Jesus, Tully Anderson or Tully Blanchard. I'm sorry,
Tully Blanchard.
And,
Yes.
and him back with the Olies with Ole Anderson and Arne Anderson. It was just peak tag team wrestling, and his promos were so underrated. And
Right.
number 5, and I'm just gonna say it and move on because it's controversial. As far as in ring, keeping everything else aside, I have to put Benoit on there. I just have to.
I agree.
I
It
can't
took
argue.
me a lot
can't
to
argue.
not put him on my list.
Yeah, you know what? Personally, whatever, we
He
all
was
have our feelings.
incredible.
But professionally, there was just, at that time, there was nobody that did it like he did.
We all fucking loved him at the time. Everybody
Right.
wanted. We all wanted to do the headbutt off the top rope,
The crippler
crossface.
Oh
Like
my
we
god,
we
his
loved all
entrance
that.
perfect too with the
I had
lighting
heard about him in
and that music.
WCW.
Yep.
You
I
can't-
remember,
yeah.
I literally remember being at my friend's house and like telling him about how Chris Benoit was like my favorite wrestler and why, right? And we're waiting for Raw to start, and I'm telling him all this. And 20 minutes later, Raw starts, and it was Vince McMahon in the ring saying that Chris Benoit had died. Like it was like
Yeah,
that same
Yeah,
day, and it
I
was like
remember.
wild, you know. So I don't want to dwell on that too much. There's going to be a lot of probably backlash if people end up
And
watching it and seeing it.
one last
Yeah.
thing I want to say about that: if it wasn't for what happened, surefire Hall of Fame ballot.
Oh, of course. Of
Right.
course.
Yeah, and we don't
100%.
condone any of that, but we're just
No.
talking about the
We do
wrestling
not
past
condone
Talk about
and
the
what was
ring.
great.
I'm
Yeah,
going to
in the
take a
ring.
quote from
Yeah.
Paul Heyman. If you talk about that man as far as his in-ring ability and as him as a wrestler, amazing.
Right.
As a man, we won't touch that.
Right.
We can't
Yes.
touch that. We don't condone it.
Yep.
What happened is very devastating, and let's just move on from that.
That's all we gotta
Correct.
say. Yeah.
And then, so top 5 greatest wrestlers. This is just going to be, you know, quick and easy, wrapping them off. I just,
Yeah.
as far as like, I look at it as far as like gimmick, in ring,
Mm-hmm.
mic skills, and drawing power. And I had Ric Flair.
Mm.
I don't want to do it, but I have to because of what he did in late 80s, early 90s wrestling. Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
I mean,
He
yeah.
made wrestling cool. He made wrestling
did.
cool in the 80s and
He
90s.
did.
You know what I
He
mean?
did.
So you have to put him on there, and you
I'd
can't
even
deny
say
how
he
much.
made it cool in the early 2000s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Like,
and the way he reinvented himself with the NWO, Stone Cold Steve Austin, again because of his what he did, as far as like, I mean, he single-handedly put WWF on his back during the Monday Night War,
He
and
did.
like and
Mhm.
led it to prominence. I would have to say,
Yeah.
I think in-ring worker, he's a close second behind his brother, and that's just my personal opinion. But I've never
Agreed.
seen anybody command the ring like Bret and Owen did.
Yep.
No.
At the time, and the way it didn't matter who they were in a match with, they would make that person better.
Right.
There's very few wrestlers that does not matter who they're wrestling, they make the other person better, and Bret and Owen both did that.
The only
And-
person I would even compare to that as far as command in the ring, he's the current Intercontinental Champion.
Gunther, yeah,
That,
very
like,
good.
you just watch how
Ring
he carries
general.
himself.
Ring general.
That's not even
Right.
to me. That's not even just a gimmick. He is the ring general.
Mhm.
Every match he's ever had, like I'll even go back to that triple threat. Was it last year's Mania with Drew and Sheamus?
Mhm.
That was one of the coolest matches I've ever watched
Mhm.
because all three of them just made each other look better, and Gunther carried that match.
Hard hitting bruisers, man.
Love
Hard hitting bruisers.
Love it.
And
Yeah.
for number 5, just to put him on there for longevity and staying relevant, I'll put the Undertaker.
Yeah.
He
Absolutely.
just carried for so long, for being a big man and being as relevant as he was for as long as he was. I think he deserves a nod to go on there.
The fact that he's still relevant,
Yeah.
talked
And
about,
that's
it's
that's
just-
fair.
no one
Um,
else has talked about the way he is.
Right. So I think for my top 5 favorite, we talked about it. We all said it, and it's The Undertaker. Or Mount Rushmore, top 5, same thing. Undertaker, that and before that, I don't want to say it either, but I have to, because it's the first wrestler that I saw, first wrestler that I really wanted to be, and that was Hulk Hogan. Like, I had the wrestling buddy or whatever, and you beat it up, and that's the first one I had, and it was Hulk Hogan. So that was my favorite. That's the first thing I remember. Second, like I said, is The Undertaker, because once that whole dark side kind of person came along and supernatural, and
Yep.
then I was like, oh shit, this is real. Like, he's really supernatural. Nothing really hurts him, with the urn, with Paul Bearer, all that made me love him. Then of course Stone Cold Steve Austin, like, can't argue with that. You can't put anything there. And then fourth, I'm gonna go CM Punk, just based
I like
on
it.
from when he came out and up until now. I mean, polarizing. Like, even when he's not there, everybody's talking about him. In ring, he's had great moments, great matches. On the mic, like, who else can touch him now? Like, and he's epitome of some of the greatest that have done it. And he's a student of wrestling, and all those people that we've mentioned came before and studied all of them and embodies all of that when you really think about that. And as far as like greatest of all time, I definitely put Ric Flair up there. You know, speaking of being able to do it all, you know, and the figure four and the woo and the being able to talk and
I love the figure four, man.
people,
That's probably my favorite submission.
yeah, and people quoting his lines and all that, of course. And then, you know, I'm gonna have to put Shawn Michaels because he was great in the ring, you know, and
Even
great on
better
the
on a
mic.
microphone.
Yeah, and it is what it is. And then I'm gonna have to go with Stone Cold again because he's just the top of everything if you're gonna speak on it. Then I go with Bret Hart because Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels really made each other great and had so many great moments and were really at that top Mount Rushmore at that time. And I just, you know, wanted to be Bret Hart too, you know, and I think everybody else did, and he was great, and he has the championships, and you know, I don't know. And as far as like runners up, you had spoke on him was like Mick Foley because he played so many characters too. You had Cactus Jack, you know,
Dude
he was
Love.
Mick Foley, he was Mankind, he was Dude Love. It was fucking awesome. You gotta respect it.
I do have one runner up.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
Bray.
Okay.
I'm putting Bray Wyatt up there because bring him up a lot. But what put him as my runner up was that moment he shared with Undertaker in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that was literally the passing of the torch as far as being the face of fear in WWE. He had the same aura, the same kind of ring command, or just overall presence. Like when the lights went out back in the day, you knew and met Undertaker. Current era, when the lights went out, those fireflies came out immediately. Every time. Even like when he returned at Extreme Rules with the new gimmick, the lights went out, the fireflies came out immediately. Everyone just knew. And to me, it's moments like that that really solidify who you are in the WWE. And I know Taker to this day won't say what was spoken between the two of them in the ring in that moment. But just the look on Bray's face when Taker was whispering in his ear, you knew that it meant the world to him.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever he said, it changed something in Bray and made him realize, I'm him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You got a runner-up, Jesse? You
Yeah,
want
so my
honorable mention?
Oh, yeah, I got an honorable mention. I can't even believe I skipped him up, but Macho Man Randy Savage.
Okay.
So as soon as I brought up like ring generals and commanding in the ring, Macho Man was, from what I've read and what I've seen, like somebody that planned his matches to a T, but he didn't script them out to where they looked fake or phony or whatever. He just wanted everything to look absolutely perfect. And if you go back and watch some of his interviews and promos back in the day, like old school Macho Man Randy Savage, they were just, I'm talking like late 80s Macho Man Randy Savage, they were just top tier. You know, everything about him was just so funny and
over the top and just
yeah,
great.
I think he did it, you know, he drank, you know, there was a lot of Coke in the room. Talk about Coca-Cola, but like, you know, it was good. It was golden, and it immersed you in the character, it made you believe, you know.
Really
Macho Man would have to be my honorable mention.
I'm gonna say Rob Van Dam.
Ooh.
Rob Van Dam. Over the chair, throwing the chair up and kicking it in the face.
He still looks good, man.
The frog splash.
The height he would get off of that turnbuckle is almost like Uso level as far as like the splash goes.
Right.
But just, oh my God.
So good.
I wonder how many bruised ribs he got just from doing that.
We talked a lot about a lot here today, you know, about wrestling history and what got us into it and what made us love it. You know, it's awesome. You know,
I hope. I hope our fans appreciate this little round of a history lesson, if you will.
Right.
And there'll be plenty more, you know, and it's like, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much to talk about that an hour doesn't give us enough time. No. We could literally sit here for 6 hours and talk pro wrestling, but that just, you know, how many people are going to stick around for 6 hours with us, you know?
Right.
So
And we're going to cover more things, in the future, great matches. We want to go back to other, top 5 and Mount Rushmore moments and wrestlers and gimmicks and all other types of stuff that's out there. And we'd like suggestions, of course. And we've got a lot. We've got a lot of ideas. So you really need to stay tuned for that type of stuff.
And if you guys have anything you want us to talk about, bring it on. We will talk about it.
Most everything, yeah.
Mostly.
Most everything, yeah. Listen, I wasn't at a Diddy party, so I can't speak on it. But anything wrestling related. If we talk wrestling related, we're
not going to bring up that Samoa Joe promo just yet.
So why don't we do another round real quick to wrap this up? We'll say match suggestion. This is something we all thought of. It'd be a good idea that we suggest a match. Anybody that's watching wants to go and check out a match in history that maybe that inspired us or maybe meant something to us, and maybe it'll mean something to you guys as well. So, Andy, why don't you go first with your match suggestion for the week?
Yeah, I'm going to say, since we're in WrestleMania season, I'm going to say WrestleMania 14, which is Stone Cold Steve Austin and Shawn Michaels. Stone Cold going for the championship, and Mike Tyson being the special outside enforcer or referee, just the buzz leading to the match and that being in Madison Square Garden also, and that Royal Rumble leading up to it, which Austin won, and part of the D-Generation X era with Shawn Michaels, and I just remember so much stress going into it, hoping that Stone Cold won, and of course he did, and it was a great time. And that's my match. Check it out.
It's a great match.
All right, Kev, you up?
I'll take it. I'm going with the ladder match. The ladder match of all ladder matches. I think you guys know what I'm about to say. Edge and Christian versus the Dudleys versus the Hardy Boys. That match, to this day, in my opinion, is still the greatest ladder match to have ever taken place.
The WrestleMania 17?
Yes. Where Edge speared Hardy off of the title.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh my God. The fact that neither one of them died in that moment is just incredible.
Beautiful moment. It was a beautiful moment.
It's such a great moment.
All right, Jesse, what's up?
So mine, I'm going to pick WrestleMania 13, actually. And it's the I Quit match between Bret the Hitman Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin. If you want, as far as I think anybody that's even trying to get into the wrestling business needs to watch that match to understand ring psychology and what needs to be done in a match to get over with the fans without having a complete spot fest.
Right.
And the double turn. The double turn at the end.
Yep.
Bret Hart turning heel and Stone Cold Steve Austin turning face without even trying. Just people willing him on to win because of his determination in the match.
Yep.
I don't think there'll be anything that really touches that. That's probably one of my top 5 favorite matches of all time.
I agree with that, and just the finish of that match,
blood coming down, and
and then it blew my mind because Austin just passed out. He didn't say I quit. So when they rang the bell and Ken Shamrock was like, I just didn't know what to think. I was like, is this match really over?
Right.
Like, did he really lose, or like what? I'd never seen it happen before. Being that young, I didn't understand it, but it was an amazing fucking match. We put him in that, I think it was kind of the figure 4, the sharpshooter.
Yep.
On the when he had him bleeding, but he had him on the turnbuckle on the outside.
The 4,
figure 4, and that was just like wow. But it was an amazing match, top 5, if not the greatest, or top 3, or however you want to put it. It's up there.
Yeah,
no matter what.
And just like at the end, like him refusing to help and walking out on his own, just that little, those little nuances in wrestling that just means so much. You know what I mean? He just passed out bleeding in the ring, and I'm not getting carried out of here. I'm walking out of here. And that was this dude's a badass dude. And and on top of that, to find out when they pulled the curtain back and you find out about that match that Stone Cold had just blown his knee out a few weeks before, and was wrestling with a bum knee the whole match, and they were able to put on that masterpiece with him being injured was just amazing.
Yeah, that match will live forever, and that that picture of his face will live forever, and that's awesome. So as far as wrestling history and match history and what we love, that's some of the moments, and as we said, there'll be more to come in the future. And once again, this is the Ringside Renaissance Wrestling Podcast. I'm Andy with Kevin, Jesse, and we're the knights at the front lines of this Renaissance and Wrestling Podcast, leading the charge.
I
We
hope you guys
tune in.
enjoyed this first episode. Stay tuned for the next round at the round table.
And
All
don't
right.
like us and unsubscribe.
Definitely don't listen to him.